Good evening, dandies. Welcome to Undetermined, the podcast.
All right. So are you good to go? Everybody good to go?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, cool.
I'm hearing a little bumping.
Yeah. I'm in my. Give me a second. I'm in my office in the basement, and my 6-year-old is still awake for some reason. And she's dancing on the floor above me. So give me a second.
I totally understand. You'll hear if you listen to our old episodes, you'll hear my dog howling in the middle of the episodes.
Yeah, she might do that too. I don't know. All right, hold on.
Oh, you're good. Things going bump in the night.
Yes.
All right. Hey, I'm glad that wasn't live.
No, you're good.
I like the little human moments anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, John had a good segue, speaking of things that go bump in the night.
Right. Yeah, that's how we got her. Yeah.
Could I leave that in, please?
Okay, that'd be fine.
All right. So we are speaking to, I hope I got your last name right, Jason Offutt.
Yeah,
correct?
That's correct. Yes.
All right. Yeah, Jason is from Missouri. He is a prolific author of, is it 11 books so far?
My 16th comes out in January.
Oh, wow. So more prolific than I thought. I have read your book, Haunted Missouri.
Yeah.
It's a timely episode as we're talking about spooky season coming up here in October. Jason, I just got to say that book was really great. I am a sucker for a lot of books on the paranormal, books on ghosts, especially like Heartland books or we're all three from Missouri. Jason is from Missouri as well. And I'll let you tell a little bit about your background. But I picked up your book, and not to go on too big of a tirade on it, but it's. I really loved how the book shares a kind of journalistic quality where it's not just these compiled stories, but it's also your experiences of going to these places and talking to these people and interviewing them.
Yeah.
And I want to get into that a little bit in the book, but you want to tell us a little bit about your background and where you're residing now? And
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I'm gonna touch on that first because I was a print journalist for 17 years, and for the last 16 years I've taught journalism at Northwest Missouri State University in Maryville.
Right on.
Yeah, so I approached the book Haunted Missouri with what I knew how to do. I be a journalist and do the research and go to the places and interview the people who've experienced things. So yeah, I'm glad it showed.
Yeah, it definitely did. And that it's one thing to retell a story. It's another thing to kind of immerse yourself in it. And I think that brings out a lot more character. Well,
and that's what I hoped, because I'm a big fan of ghost books too. And I really like, I just like spooky stuff.
mm-hmm.
I have to put myself, whenever I'm telling a story, I have to put myself in the place where it happened, because as I want my readers to be able to see what I see, to see the place, to smell if I'm standing on the end of a sidewalk and nobody else is around and I smell cigar smoke, I want to be able to show that to my readers and make it as realistic as possible. Because that's a journalist's job. And again, thank you. I'm glad that showed through.
Yeah. Where would your start with that? What made you decide this is a book I want to write, or this is a topic I want to follow?
Well, I've been interested in all things weird my entire life. When I was really young, I didn't watch Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or anything like that because at the same time there were Lost in Space reruns.
Right.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to watch. That and the original Star Trek. And then as I got a little bit older, something happened to me. I was in my house. It was at the time it was 120 years old. It was a 2-room schoolhouse back in the day. and it was turned into a house. And anyway, it was the afternoon, and I walked out out of my bedroom into a hallway that was just right out of my bedroom door, and because that's where we had all our bookshelves, and we had our encyclopedias. The World Book encyclopedias were in there.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to get the D for dinosaurs because I loved looking at that one.
Mm-hmm.
I was about 8 years old, and there was a boy about 6 years old standing in the hallway, and we lived 6 miles outside of town, the nearest town. We were a mile away from the nearest house. I lived on a farm out in the country, and there was no little boy within forever of my house.
Yeah.
So that really surprised me, and I mean, I can still see him in my head. The hair parted on the right side. It was slightly tousled. It was brown hair. He was wearing a brown flannel shirt and blue jeans, and I could see the bookshelf through him.
Huh.
And he just looked at me, and I have no idea how long I looked at him. It could have been 5 seconds. It could have been 3 hours. It was probably 5 seconds, of course. But then he blinked, and when he blinked, that broke my fear, and I just turned around, walked back into my bedroom, and I shut the door, and I didn't talk to anybody about it for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and that got me really interested in ghosts, and about the same time there were newspaper stories about Momo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Missouri Monster.
Yeah, in the early 70s, because I'm old, and I would read about those in the newspaper. And my gosh, there's a Bigfoot in my state. So those things got me understanding that there are things in this world that are supposed to be false. They're supposed to not exist, but they do. One, I saw one. Two, they were in newspaper reports. Other people were sure that they saw them. So that got me really into the paranormal, and I also like monster movies, so that didn't hurt.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Well, we're both big fans of all genres of those things, and
yeah, we've both had some experiences of our own.
Yeah, we have. I've never seen anything quite as astounding as like a full body apparition as that. That sounds just incredible.
Well, and that's one of the things that I didn't know. Of course, I didn't know at the time because I was so young. But how rare those things are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So if somebody sees a full bodied apparitions, they're either lucky or extremely unlucky. However they feel about their encounter.
Yeah, I grew up in a house that was probably about that same, an old farmhouse in southern Missouri, and it had been in my family for generations. And odd little things used to happen all the time in that house. I remember, if I were sitting by myself, I would hear someone call my name, and there would be nobody around. And that was pretty, and I would get up and look for it, and there would be nobody there. And that was pretty normal. This is like one of the weirdest ghost stories you'll hear, but it's absolutely true. When I would come home from school, the house would be empty. But the first thing you want to do when you get home from school is, go to the bathroom. So I would do that. Wouldn't bother locking the door because nobody's in the house. And the door, and it was old house, the door would just always, every time I was sitting there, would just kind of slowly open by itself. I didn't think of anything of it for a long time. It was old house, settling, drafty, whatever. It could easily be explained by a lot of things, but it happened pretty consistently. So one day I kind of got it in my head, well, maybe there's something more going on here. And I just asked out loud, would you please close the door? Closed. And this was consistent too. Anytime that door opened while I was sitting in there by myself and I asked for the door to be closed, it would close. Told my brother about it. He tried the same experiment. Same thing happened for him.
Did you try, would you get me a Coke?
So I felt like whatever it was, it's probably somebody I was related to. The house had been in my family for generations. And if that's what it was, and that it wasn't harmful, like it closed the door. Now it's a little disturbing that it's watching a little boy poop
Right.
Well, and something you said is what I got, the house settling, because there were times before I saw the apparition and times after that I would tell my parents that, I heard a creaking. It sounded like somebody walking outside my bedroom. And that's what they would say all the time. Oh, no, it's just the house settling. Okay, yeah. It was just like I'm feeling a really bad pain. Oh, Dad would say it's your growing pain.
Right.
Yeah, your
No,
bones.
Dad, it's an appendicitis. It's not growing pain.
Rub some dirt in it, son. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's something I think that has been unfair to children throughout, however many, decades or hundreds or millennium or whatever.
Sure.
Is the adults not listening to them.
Yeah.
Because all the research that I had done on various aspects of the paranormal, children and animals, they seem to see things and experience things that we don't. And either it's an ability children have that they grow out of, or it's an ability they have that's beaten out of them by society.
Right.
One of the two, or maybe both. And it's a real shame. So whenever my kids talk to me about things, my 14-year-old, when she was 3, we were looking for a new house, and we went to one that was it was built in 1883. A gorgeous 2-story house. And whenever we went in to look at a house before that, I mean, her and her 5-year-old brother would just go running crazy. New house, it's empty. Let's go look at this. And in this house, as soon as we walked inside, she raised her hands up to me and said, "Daddy, pick me up." And she clung on to me tightly throughout that whole house. And finally I said, "Honey, what's wrong?" And she leans into my ear and goes, "They're scary." And I said, "Honey, what do you mean? Who's scary?" "The ghosts."
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, and as soon as we got outside, she wanted down. Her and her brother played in the yard, and she was fine. We didn't buy that house, by the way. Because I listened to my kid.
Right. Do you think that you have that same level of discernment out of all the places that you've gone and places that you've researched? I mean, do some places, regardless of their stories, feel different to you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely they do. A few cases specifically, I'm sure, because this is a famous one, the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas.
Kansas, yeah.
Yeah. I went into that. I went to that. I'm not going to say I went into it. I parked in front of it. I got out of my car. As soon as I opened the door and stood up, I mean, I didn't even walk away from my car. I think I even still had my right foot in the floorboard.
Right.
I got a tight feeling in my chest. I had difficulty breathing. My heart started racing, and I started sweating. And I got back in my car and left.
Wow.
There was something there that my body was telling me I didn't want to deal with, so I didn't deal with it. And I've had that happen a couple of times. One in the Hotel Savoy in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
I went into it. I'd read things about the fact that it was haunted, and I went into it, and I didn't interview anybody. I didn't let anybody know I was there. I just walked in, and I went through every floor, every hallway. And in this one hallway, I walked out of the stairwell, opened the door, walked out of the stairwell, and immediately I felt just like I did at the Sally House. And it was really, really bizarre. And I took a couple pictures and left. And when I interviewed people, that was a hallway where there's a ghost often sighted. So for your listeners, if you feel like that, just leave. You can come back later. Because another time that happened to me at a spot that I'd been to before, and not felt any panic. And one time I went and I was panicked, and I went back like 20 times afterwards, and I was fine. But that one time, something didn't want me there.
Yeah. No, I've had feelings like that before, and it's weird. It like hits you out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like you can be totally fine, and then all of a sudden, the one I'm thinking of is I was at this lake that I used to like to hang out at night when I was a teenager, And it's a little man-made lake. Me and my friends would go hang out, but every now and then you just kind of got like this weird vibe or something kind of weird would happen out there. But there was one night in particular that I was hanging out with a friend, and then just like all of a sudden, both of us just look at each other like, do you want to get out of here? And it was just like this unison, like, let's just go. And there was nothing that like provoked it. We just kind of both felt like we need to go. So we started the car and left. And as we're driving out, I'm turning to my friend and I'm like, are we just being idiots? Do you think there's really like a ghost or whatever it is out there? And we're kind of laughing at it. And I swear, as soon as I asked that question, this was like, 80s, I had a cassette sitting in the dash that just flew out and hit my friend in the chest. It was just sitting there as we're driving down the road.
So there was your answer.
Yeah, right. It was like, no, you need to get the fuck out.
Yeah, I equate this. I mean, I again, growing up in the country on a farm, there were plenty of times I loved playing outside. I would go out in the cornfields, I'd go out in the woods, and there were times to where all of a sudden all the noise stopped. I didn't hear any bird sounds, didn't hear any insects. Everything just grew quiet. And if that happens, that means there's a predator around somewhere.
Right.
And I got the hell out of there. And I equate that feeling that I had and what you were talking about with your friend, that we just need to leave now. I equate it. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a predator there, and your body's saying, hey, yeah, you need to, self-preservation here.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I always tell people that's an interesting aspect, an interesting introspect into, whether or not you feel a place is haunted is I was a contractor doing carpeted floors, hardwood floors, doing flooring for many years.
Right.
But as a result, you are in and out of hundreds of people's homes. All throughout the year, over the course of 10 years, of course, I was in many people's homes. So many places I'd been into that look like the old spooky mansion type place that you just felt nothing at all. And I've been in ranch homes that were built in the 50s that you didn't want to be in for more than 10 minutes at a time. And just got you that kind of feeling and just this kind of impending doom that I felt in a lot of those places. But I didn't have a lot of experiences until I was a little older.
You lived in kind of a crazy place, though, too, with Fanchette. Like that whole area, when you drove into it, it just kind of gave you like this weird vibe. I don't know if you're familiar with Fanchette, Missouri.
No, I'm not.
John, you've got a little bit more history on it since you lived there.
Yeah, well, it's actually been reassigned as Peace Valley, Missouri, I want to say in about I'd get the history wrong. I think it was the 1920s. Reestablished another post office there. But Fanchon was a kind of ghost town in this corner of four kind of crossroads that are out in the middle of the county. And I mean, it's the middle of nowhere. You're 30 miles from a gallon of milk. It's got a lot of storied history, church burnings,
tornadoes,
different ghosts that come up and down the road that you're not supposed to stop if you see the trench coat man, all sorts of things, small children running in front of cars in that area, that appear and disappear. Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories. And, we were young, we were poor. We put a little trailer on that property a long time ago. And we had a bunch of activity there, bunch of noises, bunch of sounds, voices, cabinets slamming, furniture moving. That was pretty rough. But, I never felt anything malevolent there. I didn't feel anything that made me feel like I was in danger. But boy, it would scare the shit out of me sometimes. I mean, I read Jason one time where you said in an interview, you're not the kind of guy who goes seeking these things out because, you feel uneasy about it. If you do encounter something.
Well, right, because if you seek something out, it's going to find you.
Right.
If you want to find there's very, very, very good chance it's going to find you. And these things don't stay put. I mean, the old ghost stories from back in the day that this ghost died in this house and that's why it's there all the time. Well, no. These spirits or demonic entities or whatever they end up being, they can go wherever the hell they want to. And if I'm out looking for one, man, I don't want it to find me because it might follow me home.
Right.
Yeah. So that's another reason why I go with the journalistic journalistic style of doing it, because I'm not looking for the ghost. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for the story about the ghost.
Right.
There's something you said that I want to interrupt about. Sorry,
sure.
You were going to ask me a question, but I mean, you said you've been in really old houses and that there's been nothing, mm-hmm. and you've been in more recent ones. I mean, like 1950s and up, and
right.
They, you didn't want to be in there. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I was in a house. It's been probably about 20 years ago that this guy had built, mm-hmm. and 4 of us were over there playing cards. We were in the basement playing pitch, mm-hmm. and the basement was empty because it was a new house. All that was down there was a card table, 4 chairs, and a beer fridge. Mm-hmm. And we were playing cards. And the owner of the house, his name was Victor. And from the far corner of the room, in the basement, just total concrete, mm-hmm. a woman's voice said, "Victor." Oh. Okay, we kept playing the hand until it was over, and then we looked at each other. Did you hear that? Yeah, I heard that. I heard that. Did you hear that? Yeah, she said Victor. It was a woman's voice, right? Yeah, it was a woman's voice. And then we left Victor home alone. We got the hell out of there. Right. But it was a new house. It was a relatively new house.
Yeah.
So I mean, what was that? Where did this voice come from? Was it on the land, or did it just happen to wander by that night and say, "Hey, these guys are playing cards. I want to have a chat"?
Yeah.
I mean, either way, we didn't want to hear it.
That's interesting because of all the ergo theories. Everybody says therefore, and I hear that one a lot. Well, it's a brand new home. Nobody ever died here. But I mean, who knows if that's what, is the reasoning? I mean, we're talking about something about the unknown. It's just that.
Right.
How do you know what the source is, what the reasoning is behind it, or, if it goes back to, but it's kind of funny how, are there any of those that peeve you? Like a lot of people go back to like the Native American lore, or they go back to this, or they go back to this sighting and they say, therefore, this is the ghost of so-and-so. Or do you like to just keep a more open mind about that? Or do you kind of follow what it goes in the story?
Oh, no, I have an open mind about all of this. If mm-hmm. something is, if somebody's going to identify a ghost, it has to be something, it has to be an apparition that they've seen mm-hmm. and recognize the face.
I see. Yeah.
I interviewed somebody who worked at the Jesse James farm in Kearney, Missouri, mm-hmm. and they saw an apparition, and it was Jesse's wife, Zerelda, and she was able to identify the person that she saw because she's seen pictures of Zerelda James. Huh. And it kind of helped that the apparition dissolved in front of her. It wasn't a person.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, if somebody's going to say, well, this is this person because they died here, well, again, ghosts are can be anywhere they want to be, but if you can identify it.
Right.
By sight, I think that holds more credence, except for the fact that, because I've researched this stuff for a long time, and I'm firmly convinced there are entities out there. I don't know, people call them elementals, people call them jinn, people call them demons, whatever moniker they go by. I think there are powerful entities out there that mimic people.
Sure.
And they can appear as ghosts. I mean, I'm fully convinced that anytime somebody contacts somebody with a Ouija board or a seance or automatic writing or anything like that, it's probably not the person. It's probably not a ghost they're talking to. Mm. It's one of these higher up entities.
Mm. Well, and it's interesting that you bring that up too, because I mean, you've written books not only about just ghosts and regionally, but I mean books about time travel, books about cryptids and monsters, and some novels as well. Is there any particular area, let's say, between cryptids, UFOs, ghosts, any area of the paranormal that kind of tickles you more than any other?
Oh, man, time travel does it for me, number one.
Really?
Yeah, I love time slip stories.
Mm-hmm.
I also love missing time stories, although that kind of goes over into the UFO realm. But anything to do with differences in time, I absolutely love that. I had my own missing time story or occurrence. I was working at a newspaper in Independence, Missouri, and we put the paper to bed, and it was 11:30 at night, and I was driving home, and it was a 50-minute drive. I lived in this little town way off in the boonies, and I just drove past this sign that I saw every day when I drove, every night when I drove home, and it said my hometown of Orick. It said 5 miles, and exactly at that moment, the Rolling Stones' "Gimme Shelter" came on, and that's my favorite Stones tune. And it's I think 4 minutes and 26 or 4 minutes and 27 seconds, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna listen to this all the way home.
Right.
The highway was 55 still at the time, so I had the cruise control set on 55, and I was listening to the song, and all of a sudden everything just I don't know what happened, but I got snapped out of road hypnosis. And because the engine was struggling, because I was going up a hill and I had it on cruise control. And I looked around because there was no hill between where I was and my turnoff. And I looked around and it was foggy. And I went up one hill and down the hill and up another one and down that one and up another one. And then I saw a light in the fog, and I pulled over, and it was a Jehovah's Witness church. And I realized where I was. I was 5 miles on the other side of my turnoff. And I was sitting there in the fog wondering what the hell just happened to me. And then I realized that "Gimme Shelter" was still on the radio.
Still playing.
Yeah.
And it played for another minute and a half. So yeah, it's like, what the hell happened to me? I don't have a clue. I have no clue what happened.
You got the extended cut.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So yeah, time travel, anything to do with time that's my favorite subject.
Yeah.
Monsters, the cryptids being number 2.
Yeah, I like monsters too a lot. I do like time travel. What are some of your biggest, detractions from trying to time travel after doing the research on it and everything else like that? You can say, skepticisms like the bootstrap paradox, or
when the thing with time travel is physics says it can happen.
Right.
Yeah, physicists say yes, this can happen, but we're just not ready for it yet. Which I'm completely cool with that. But then there are do I think people have time traveled? Yes, I think it might have happened. With machines, probably not. I interviewed Mike Markham a number of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember that name. He was Art Bell.
Okay.
Art Bell show. Yeah. He's on the coast.
Yeah, did stories about this guy.
Yeah.
Well, when I moved to Maryville, which is where I live, I caught an episode of it was a repeat of Coast to Coast, and it was the Mike Markham interview that Art had done back in the 90s, and I'm like, holy crap, the town that Markham did that in is like 27 miles from where I live. So I was able to track him down and interview him. And his story is absolutely bonkers. Did he travel in time? I seriously doubt it, but it's a fun story.
Right.
But I think people possibly do travel in time due to what John Keel called window areas. Window areas being thin veils between different realities.
Right.
Yeah, and I've interviewed plenty of people with time slip stories, and there are some really authentic sounding time slip stories out there that I think maybe one of these days you might walk down the street and find yourself in 1842.
I've kind of wondered sometimes, like, if ghosts are that, like, almost like just a little bit of somebody that's maybe slipped a little bit, but not quite. Does that make sense?
Right. No, exactly. I'm right there with you. I think they're, because a lot of ghost encounters to me sound like that. I've interviewed, plenty of people who do reenactments at Civil War battlefields. Mm-hmm. And there are, campfires with people sitting around it drinking chicory or whatever they drank back in the day. And it's like,
right.
Why the hell would ghosts be doing that? Mm-hmm. Maybe they were actually seeing what happened back 150, 60 years ago, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, boy, it leads you into a lot of things about life after death as well. And, and just our uncertainty about that. I think one of the kind of things that disturbed me most that I read recently was an article about the death process and understanding how, even if you look at it from a purely scientific perspective, right, it's all these electrical impulses in the brain. And yes, our organs may cease to function and everything else, but who knows how long those charges and those little flashes are going on in the head for, until full on decomposition. It just makes you wonder. It's like, and where does that go? Where does that dissipate to? What does it become? Is it just the organ processing it? I don't know.
Right. And it could be, that's what I've wondered for a really long time. Because you hear, I had a near-death experience. What happened? Well, there was a light, and I went to the light. Mm-hmm. Well, what if the light's just, your synapses firing? Maybe it's a chemical released into your brain.
Right.
Maybe that's, not you going to the light, but your brain misfiring, or that's what happens when you die. Mm-hmm. Which isn't that comforting, but then again, having seen a full-bodied apparition once in my life, I know there's something out there.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's just the thing, I guess. I've seen enough in my life that I just can't explain. Never anything, I don't think, that spectacular, but I have, I think one of the more recent ones too, was going to the Crescent Hotel down in Eureka Springs. And, it resonated with me when I read that, you're not the kind of guy out looking for that because, the shit's scary. It really is.
Right.
Yeah.
And boy, I was so uneasy that whole night. I didn't sleep well. I did hear a disembodied sigh right next to my ear while I was in bed. And it's funny. I mean, just even a person's breath, I could tell that it was a woman standing right by my bed. And I just heard as everyone else was asleep, I was laying there awake. And just heard next to me, kind of a disapproving, almost like, what's this guy doing?
That sounds like my wife.
They'll let anybody in here. It was kind of what I got. And, but I was, it's still, I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Wasn't comfortable, but I still wouldn't give that trip up for anything. I thought it was great, but I still think that place is haunted as hell.
Yeah, that's one of the a lot of people who know me can't believe I haven't been there yet. Yeah, it's a place I want to go, but I haven't been there.
It's a beautiful drive down there. I live in Columbia, Missouri, so it's not too far, not too terribly far, about 3.5 hours from here. But
right, I live basically in Iowa.
Right.
Yeah, you're up closer that way.
I mean, seriously, I can get in the car in 15 minutes. I'm in Iowa.
Right.
Yeah.
You can go to Children of the Corn stuff up there, I guess.
Right.
What's the farthest you've traveled to investigate something or write about it?
Well, I didn't travel there just to investigate this, but I taught because I teach at a university, and I proposed a class that got accepted that I was really happy about. It was a travel writing class in London.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, one summer I taught a travel writing class in London, and one of the places, there were a number of places I had to go. One, the pub that Graham Chapman from Monty Python frequented. I had to go there.
Nice.
I had to go see Douglas Adams' grave.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which was in Highgate Cemetery, which while I was there, I interviewed people, and I wrote an article about the Highgate vampire.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which was seen in the late 60s, early 1970s. And he was never seen attacking anybody. This figure was tall, thin, bone white skin, dressed as an aristocrat. And when people saw him in the cemetery at night, he would leap over the wall. So, I mean, he did inhuman-like, inhuman things. And there were a number of stories done about him, and he got a lot of newspaper attention, and people would go there on ghost hunts and vampire hunts, and nobody ever was able to solve what the issue was. But the Highgate vampire was pretty big for a while, and it was fun researching him.
That would be.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. Not heard that story.
Well, just places with history too. I think that's pretty interesting. And London definitely has a very long and interesting history.
Mm-hmm.
Dear Lord, I mean, people have lived there for thousands of years. I went to Westminster Abbey, which is, it was built in 1000 AD.
Right.
And there were, actual, I walked over the graves because gravestones were, part of the pavement that you walked on inside the building. I walked over knights.
Yeah.
Right.
Actual literal knights. I mean, yeah, the amount of history in that city is insane to think about.
Yeah, that's incredible about the UK. Just when I went over there and went to Ireland, it's so ancient compared to here.
Right. Now, yeah, the pub down the street from the place where I stayed was 450 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
The house I'm sitting in right now was built in 1978.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. We would go by farmers who were out, and we'd see like some ancient, not quite as impressive as Stonehenge, but some sort of, ancient structure. And we'd be like, what is that? And they would just shrug and say, I don't know. It's been here forever. It's like,
right.
No idea.
I'm intending to propose another travel writing class for 2023. And I want to go to the UK and look for monsters, like the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
And, go to Bentwoods. Bentwoods, the forest with the U.S. and British Air Force.
Oh, yeah. The UFO.
So the UFO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to go to places like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody wants to sign up for my class, please.
Shit, man.
I'd love to, man. That sounds great. It sounds incredible. What was your favorite cryptid to investigate?
This is going to be boring.
No, it's not.
By me saying this is going to be boring, can you guess what it is?
Momo.
That's Bigfoot. Yeah, it's Bigfoot.
Right.
Just because of the fact there's so much damn evidence for Bigfoot. If all of the evidence for Bigfoot was put on trial as a murder trial, I mean, the same level of evidence, somebody get the chair.
Right.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's so much evidence for this, and it's not just, the evidence we've collected, recently. It's Bigfoot has its prints. I'm sorry I had to do that on every freaking continent on this planet. Yeah. I mean, except Antarctica that we know of.
Right.
But I mean, if we've got a Bigfoot in North America, in South America, Europe, there's they've had Bigfoot encounters in the past in England, for God's sake. It's an island. Australia, all over Asia. There were reports for years in Africa, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, about these giant chimpanzees that walked on two legs, howled at the moon, and they could kill and eat leopards. They were that powerful.
Wow.
And American and European, Western scientists said, "Oh, that's a cute story, but it doesn't really exist." Well, in 1998, the Billy ape was discovered. BILI. That's the name of the forest where it was discovered, and it's a giant chimpanzee that walks on its hind legs most of the time. It builds nests like a gorilla. It was been witnessed killing leopards and animals that big and vicious and eating them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was proven true.
Right.
What about all these other stories?
Sure.
The orang pindak, the Alma, the Yeren, the Yowie. I mean, there are an equal number of stories about these very entities, and we, in the West poo-poo them, but the people who live there say they're true. Why are they wrong and we're right?
Right. He even shows up in Star Wars movies, right? We've seen him. We've all seen him.
Well, one of the funny things about that, during Return of the Jedi, they were shooting the indoor scenes in the Pacific Northwest, and they had to have extra security because they were afraid somebody would, a hunter would shoot Chewbacca.
I didn't know that, but we actually, one of our friends, Aaron, his dad was deeply involved in production of the
Bogey Creek, in the Legend of
Bogey Creek. Yeah.
Boggy Creek, Legend of Boggy Creek. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like involved with that, and I guess Chewbacca was kind of loosely based on that.
Yeah, from what they heard. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Well, the Legend of Boggy Creek. That takes me somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
There's a strange thing about the Boggy Creek monster. The footprints had 3 toes.
Mm-hmm.
That is also seen in the Honey Island swamp monster in Louisiana, which is another Bigfoot.
Not that far away, right?
Momo, seen in Louisiana, Missouri, also left 3-toed footprints. There are stories of 3-toed footprints left by a Bigfoot in Iowa and Minnesota.
So sort of a like north-south corridor there.
Right. I don't have the resources to do this, but man, if it traveled, maybe with seasons, and up and down the Mississippi River, that would make a lot of sense.
Sure.
Yeah, it would. That's interesting.
Yeah, because 3-toed Bigfoot, I mean, where do they exist? Well, right up and down the Mississippi River.
Yeah, and I think that's something too, that a lot of people, I think they kind of overlook when they're skeptical about Bigfoot. And I have some skepticisms about it, but it's like really the vastness of this country and the vastness of areas like that that are just untouched by people or never seen by people, and even with UFOs, how often do we look up? I think about that a lot. Boy, there's a big area to cover. I mean, it's something I was listening to a podcast earlier on the Jersey Devil and talking about the Pine Barrens. And I never even realized how big that area is. Just massive. I mean, 1 million+ acres, I believe.
That's a lot, yeah.
Right. It's huge. And I mean, New Jersey's like one of the most tightly packed, in terms of population, states in the nation. But we've got the Pine Barrens, which are huge, and compare that to the Rocky Mountains, and it's nothing.
Yeah.
And the Pacific Northwest, and I mean, Bigfoot's been seen in the desert.
Right.
How many square miles of desert do we have in this country?
Right. If you've ever been on a plane, look down sometime.
Right.
Yeah.
We got fields all through the Midwest. In working on my book, Chasing American Monsters, I found Bigfoot's been seen in every state but Hawaii.
Interesting.
I mean, even Rhode Island.
Yeah.
They've had Bigfoot reports because there's wilderness in every state. And there have been a lot of reports of Bigfoot seen around rivers, which makes sense because animals travel that way. Mm-hmm. Have you traveled by boat up a river?
Yeah.
Because, there's nothing there.
No, there's not.
Unless you're going through a big city, there's nothing on either side of the river but trees.
Right.
So there are plenty of places, absolutely, that Bigfoot could hide. And these things are apparently intelligent, so they would know how to avoid us.
Right. At least get away. Yeah.
If any cryptid's going to be discovered, it's going to be Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed, man. I'd be excited for that day.
Problem is, we're going to have to kill one.
Yeah. I don't know. It's America.
Could show up dead.
Yeah. Good.
Watch the rivers.
They haven't yet.
Yeah. So what do you got in the works right now? As far as something that's just seeking publishing or something that you're currently writing about?
Yeah, you mentioned novels earlier. My last few books have been novels. My last one that come out was you had to build a time machine, which is a humorous sci-fi. I've got a horror novel called The Girl in the Corn that's coming out in January, and right now I'm editing another humorous science fiction book that I'm looking for a publisher for.
Nice,
cool.
You mentioned Coast to Coast. You were on there not too long ago, weren't you?
August, maybe? July? No, I think it was July. I think it was on there in July, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my third time on Coast to Coast, and I had always hoped to be on with Art Bell, but I never got him. I was on with George twice, and I don't remember my first interview. Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
That's still pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, I thought I'd be nervous, having 500 stations and umpteen million people listening, but I wasn't, because I tend to approach interviews as, I'm just sitting here, having a beer with you.
Mm-hmm.
We're just chatting.
That's pretty much how we do the podcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which also has about, 500 million people listening.
All right, yeah. I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that.
That's a cool show. We've talked about Coast to Coast a few times on the show.
Oh, quite a bit. Yeah.
We talked about it with Matt Chamberlain.
I think. Yeah. Oh, we used to love Art Bell. Yeah, listening to that.
So don't give up, man. You never know. Weirder things might happen. That you might get Art Bell still, just because he's dead.
Yeah, he's dead. Yeah, I know.
Right? Given the topic of conversation, I think it's a possibility.
It is a possibility. I'll tell you, one of the things that, and he first appeared on there with George Knapp, and I like George Knapp a lot.
Yeah.
He's a solid journalist. That's the reason I like him. But he's the one who got David Paulides, his first national attention. And I love David Paulides' work. The whole Missing 411 is just scarily fascinating.
Oh yeah, I love those documentaries. Those were great.
Yeah, any time people go missing, I'm now glued to it, just because of just because of him.
Right. Well, and it also kind of harkens back to what we were saying about the vastness of the world and just how if it's so hard to find a person who's been in the same spot if they're dead, something on the move might be even harder to find.
Right. Yeah.
What about you've done a lot of UFO research then in Missouri, particularly around this area?
Well, yeah, I've done some. There was the UFO wave in 1973 that hit the country, also hit Missouri. Mm-hmm. There was a huge slew of UFO sightings throughout the entire state, more central and eastern Missouri, but there were some around Kansas City, and there was some in southern Missouri as well. Mm. There was one really, really big one in 1941 that you're probably familiar with, down between Sikeston and Cape Girardeau. There was allegedly a UFO crash.
I don't know if I know this story.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about this, not a whole lot.
And forgive me, I wasn't ready for this, so I can't remember the name of the woman who broke this story. But she was the granddaughter of a minister who was called. He was in that area, and he got a call in the middle of the night, and it was to go to the scene of an airplane crash, a small airplane, and say a blessing over the pilot and the passengers.
Oh wow!
And when he got there, the Army Air Corps, because they're at that point they didn't have the Air Force; it was the Army Air Corps. Mm-hmm. The Army Air Corps was there. There was a base in the area. And the police were there, fire department, sheriff's department, and people in black suits were there. And when he went, there was not an airplane. There was a disc. And the people that he said a prayer over weren't people. They were what he described. They were grays. Mm. He was told to be quiet about this, and it was one of those deathbed confessions. And if that was the only story, I would kind of ignore this.
Right.
But I interviewed a woman named Linda Wallace, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, who was doing research on her father, who was at the Army base that was down there. Huh. Because she didn't know him that well. They traveled a lot, and they were separated at some point. But anyway, she was trying to find out more about her father, and she went to old folks' homes, to retirement homes, and found some people who served with her father. But they also talked about a crash of an aircraft that wasn't one of ours. Huh. It was a disc that crashed between Sikeston and Cape Girardeau, and the people who were piloting it weren't human. she talked to a couple of these people at different retirement homes, and that struck her as funny. And she started doing research into police records, sheriff's department records, fire department records, and they had all been removed. And the records from the Air Force, or not the Air Force, but the Army base, all those records were removed from that year and stored in a warehouse in St. Louis that burned down.
Convenient.
And when she looked at the local newspapers, they were microfilm, and there were black chunks where certain stories had been. And, obviously they'd been removed. So although she doesn't have definitive evidence, the circumstantial evidence there, she's thinking that, yeah, maybe this thing really did happen.
Yeah.
And they tried to cover it up.
Right.
Makes you wonder what they did with the bodies, Yeah. Isn't there a supposed grave site of an alien here in America too?
In Texas.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know this one.
It was in Aurora, Texas, and it was during the airship wave in 1897, 1896, 1897. There were a lot of airships seen across the United States and in France. They were basically dirigibles, and they flew silently, except when people saw them, they could hear like piano music sometimes, or they could hear people talking in a foreign language. And they had headlights. I mean, they were seen seriously all across the U.S. I when I was researching something else, I ran across one of these stories in an old newspaper of can't remember the name of the town, but it's a suburb of Omaha. But there was a story from there anyway. But this was in Aurora, Texas, and apparently the vehicle hit a windmill of this farm and crashed.
Yeah.
And there was one occupant, and he was buried in the in a cemetery. And the remains of the ship were chopped up and tossed down a well.
Well,
that's weird.
Could be sitting there just for us all to find.
Yeah.
Well, enough people have looked for both that they can't find it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because isn't the grave itself like unmarked, or they can't really...
Well, it was marked, and then somebody stole the
headstone,
stole the tombstone at one point, and now it's unmarked.
Put it in a church, and
waiting for Nicolas Cage to find it.
Right.
You know what? If anybody could,
it'd be Nicolas Cage.
I think so.
It would be Nick Cage.
That movie felt legit to me.
It did.
Yeah. What's your scariest story, in your opinion? Since we're kind of in that season.
Oh my gosh, scariest.
It doesn't have to be the scariest or favorite scary one.
Just what comes to mind.
Okay, I'll tell you part of the story. I'm not going to tell you the whole thing because it scares the hell out of me personally.
All right.
I was asked to write a story about an artifact. And I went and I interviewed people about the artifact, and I slept a night in the same room as the artifact. And the artifact is supposed to be cursed. And when I went home, I started getting sick. I also started to notice things on the highway. And when I got back into my town that were directly related to the artifact that shouldn't have been on the highway or in my town. And when I got home for the next 2 days, my 5-year-old son, and he's 16 now, but he started complaining about certain symptoms that are related to the artifact. And at that point, I'm like, I'm done researching anything except for monsters or maybe time travel. I'm done researching the paranormal at that point.
Yeah. Too close to home. Yeah.
I had something come home with me, and it scared the shit out of me, guys.
Was it a doll?
No.
Okay. I've read about some really creepy dolls that shit like that happens.
Yeah, but there was sickness with both of us. Me more than him, fortunately. There were unexplainable smells that were related to the object, and I was done.
Did you write about it?
No, and this is like one of the first times I've ever talked about it.
Interesting. Yeah.
That is.
You'll have to put that on a blog sometime when you can bring yourself to do it. But yeah, something like that affecting the family. Ooh.
Yeah, and seriously, I haven't. It's been I don't know, 10 years, maybe. I don't remember, 8, 9, 10. But seriously, I haven't written about anything but time travel, UFOs, or cryptids since then.
Well, you probably don't want to go them. There's a really cool place in Omaha called the Museum of Shadows. You check it out.
I just recently read of that. I'd never heard of it, but I recently read about it. And yeah, I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, we went there this summer. It's kind of an uneasy feeling. Yeah, because it's something like just thousands of these possessed artifacts that are donated to the museum or have them removed, and then they put them in quarantine for a while, and they supposedly bless them, and they do all these things. I don't know. That doesn't seem like a good idea of a business to run for me.
Yeah.
It sounds like a sci-fi show that's on at 11 o'clock at night, though, too.
Yeah. And I think they have their own channel on Amazon.
Do they?
Yeah. 99 cents an episode or whatever. But interesting stuff in there, though. Some interesting artifacts. I'm glad I didn't have to touch any of them. Could just look at them. Yeah. I was ready to get the hell out of there.
Anything that you've looked into and then you were just like, this is just absolute bullshit.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, there have been plenty of people I've interviewed.
Right.
That this is absolute bullshit.
Right.
I mean, I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt if they say, I had a Bigfoot encounter, or I saw a ghost, or I saw this in the sky. Yes, I will interview you about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also interviewed people who've been like, I remote viewed Mars and saw the ruins there, but I've also been abducted by aliens, and I've got a portal in my room or in my house.
Right.
And it's like, okay, that's way too much stuff.
Right.
You did not have all this happen to you.
You're just schizophrenic. Yeah.
That's what we call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one thing I can't complain, and there's probably a logical reason for it. But at Gravity Hill, I think every state's got a Gravity Hill.
Sure.
This one is south of Kansas City.
Yep, I've been to it.
You've been to it?
Yep.
Yeah, I went there, and I took levels, carpenter's levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I parked my vehicle on a flat spot. I put carpenter's levels all around the vehicle, and it was flat. Okay, so I put them back in my vehicle. I sat in it. I put it in neutral, and the car moved. It rolled down the hill. Not down the hill, but it started moving, and it got 30 to 35 miles per hour.
Wow. Until
Until it came to a little rise, and it slowed down.
Huh.
I couldn't explain that at all.
I always assumed, because I have been there, and it's kind of weird hills around there. And you just kind of wonder, well, maybe it's just kind of things are laid out and it's almost like an optical illusion.
Yeah. Huh.
Well, that's what I went there expecting.
Yeah, that's why you would take the levels.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, I took the levels to make sure that it was level, and it was level, and I have no idea what would make that vehicle move when I just put it in neutral. I had the key off.
Huh.
Yeah,
I put it in neutral, and it got up to 35 miles, and started slow. The car was filthy, so I didn't have to put flour on the back of it.
Right.
To see if there were handprints or anything. There weren't any handprints, of course. But, yeah, I mean, I still expect that it was something explainable. I just can't explain it.
Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know that, it's just this country road, middle of nowhere, south of Kansas City. And you pull up to it, and it doesn't look weird. There's nothing. It's like pastures and shit. And you put your car in neutral, and it'll just roll.
I was reading today that the Kansas City airport is haunted. I didn't know that. A lot of stories around there.
I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah. People be grabbed, pushed in the terminal. People running across the runways. They'll see sometimes, or running across the roads there. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. But
well, there's a lot of meth in Kansas City, so that might explain some of it.
Sure.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. That's where I am.
Yeah. Could be other kinds of creepy crawlies
around
that area.
We had this was at a place I worked at in Kansas City.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I was working in an office, and it was downtown, and they were getting ready to move out. Like, our building had been sold, and the new people that were buying the building were just like doing a lot of stuff, and they ended up digging up our parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
While they were digging it up, there was like this day where like 911 kept getting calls from an extension at our office, and nobody would answer. This was weird. And right after that, they discovered like this old French Catholic cemetery. Like, they dug up a body like immediately after this.
Uh-huh.
When the police showed up to check that out, the extension was one that wasn't in use. It wasn't attached to any phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize what kind of French influence that we have in Missouri, not just Missouri, but the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of clear on the east side because there are a lot of French names. Des Moines is a French word, two French words meaning the mounds.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of French influence here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that has anything to do with ghosts, but
I don't know either, but yeah, we got to watching it. They had like this excavation, like it really screwed up construction. But they had to have like forensic people come out and then all kinds of things. And they moved the whole cemetery somewhere else, and because nobody knew it was there.
Yep. You moved the parking lot, but you didn't move the bodies, did you?
Right. And, well, then people like weird stuff happened. We had this one employee that like this door that it was like a really, it had a really strong, the bar that keeps it from closing too fast. Mm-hmm. And the door just slammed this dude. He had to go to the hospital and get stitches, and there was nothing wrong with the door. It just slammed him. Like, it was like the next day that happened. There were a couple other things, it seems like, too, that were kind of weird.
Interesting.
In 10 or 15 years, it's not going to be blamed on ghosts. It's going to be blamed on AI.
Could be.
Right. It could be.
That's scary, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's terrifying.
It's scarier to me than ghosts.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly is.
Yeah.
So, as far as your online presence stuff, where can people go to? Are you still blogging? Anything like that?
Yeah, I occasionally post stuff on my blog. A lot of it now is more writing involved. I'll post some short stories or give some writing advice. Maybe some updates on the next book coming out. I'm on Twitter a lot. Mm-hmm. It's at the Jason Offutt. I'm also on Instagram. I avoid Facebook. I've been on Facebook 3 different times and hated it every single time, and I'm probably never going back.
All right.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me and ask a question or give me a comment about something, yeah. Mm-hmm. On jasonoffutt.com is my website, and just send me an email.
Awesome.
Cool. Good place to get your books as well.
Yes, absolutely. They're also all on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those places.
Excellent. Well, man, we'll have to get together since we're all in Missouri at some point in time.
Yeah.
Meet up, have a beer, and tell some more spooky stories. But this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, one of your from in Columbia, so you'll have to bring some Shakespeare's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely. Some Shakespeare's, maybe some Booches, some Logboat Brewery.
Oh, God, yeah. Booches is beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, does it still have a million pool tables?
Yep.
Of course it's got to. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 million pool tables and 3 places to sit. Yep.
Yeah, it was great when I've been there. I've been to Columbia a lot. My dad graduated from Mizzou, and we had season tickets to football for a long time.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, and Booches was a great place. I mean, because you sit at the bar and you order a beer and a hamburger, and the bartender gives you a beer and then turns around and cooks your hamburger.
Yeah.
Right.
He doesn't have to move. He just has to turn. That's terrific.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good sliders, too.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, we don't want to keep you on all night or anything, but anything else you want to plug? Anything else you want to add? Or
No, just anybody interested, go to jasonoffutt.com. There's all sorts of stuff about me, and thanks for reading and thanks for listening. And guys, it's we tried this for a long time. I'm glad we finally got together.
It was almost cursed.
Yeah, almost.
I know.
I think we've got it in the bank now. We'll find out, though. Probably jinxed myself. Yeah, knocking on some wood right now.
All right, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Jason Offutt, thank you for coming on. We had a great time.
All right, Matt, John, thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right, have a great weekend, dandies.